Hello, and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. This week, we are talking about simplifying parenting. And I am really excited for this topic. To be honest, as a parent who lives in DC, where there's always a lot going on, a lot of pressure to do, a lot of pressure to be busy, I find this topic very, very appealing. So I am very excited to have a guest who is my expert on this because I am definitely not the expert here. Jenna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Just rushing back from all the things to sit down and talk with you. So it's like perfect timing.
Good timing.
Yeah. So let's just start off. Tell folks a little bit about what you do and sort of why this topic is relevant for you.
Absolutely. So my name is Jenna Michael. I am a mom of four. I had four kids in 5 years, and I homeschool my kids. I love to run. I love to write.
Me too.
It's the best, right? And I just wrote a book. It came out recently. It's called Let's Choose Less. And the book basically talks about my family's journey to finding a simpler path for parenting. So I kind of started my parenting journey the way that most parents do and became hungry for an easier pathway. And so my book journals and shares a little bit about how we found that. And then I've since also started parent coaching. So I work one-on-one with parents to be able to have more of a conversation around some of these topics as well.
I love that. There is so much pressure, I think, just broadly culturally to be busy and
Mhm.
productive, not to be simple, not to simplify, not to do less. There's so much pressure to do more, not to do less. And I feel like that can really get in the way of so many things when it comes to parenting in general, but also, gosh, those early years, when kids need so much from you.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times parents these days are finding their value in what they're doing for their kids and not in necessarily just being with their kids or
Hmm.
enjoying their kids, right? We focus so much on the things that we should be checking off of the list, whether
Yes.
it's purchasing items or accomplishing certain milestones at certain stages or whatever those things are, versus just being able to say, I've got a kid and my kid is awesome and I'm just going to ride this wave, and it's going to be, it's ups and it's downs, and let's see where it takes us.
Hmm. Yeah, that being present and just being with. Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny. I think about back to like my oldest is 12. And I think about all the stuff we bought when I was
Oh
pregnant with
man.
him and
Mm-hmm.
then never use. Like, and then my daughter, who's just about to turn 7, we bought almost nothing. Not because we had everything, because frankly we didn't. We'd given away a lot of it. But because I was like, whatever, we're gonna co-sleep because that's what works for us. And we had like a little sidecar bassinet just in case. And we had some diapers and stuff. We had clothes, but like we didn't actually get a ton of stuff because we used so little of it the first time. I was like, whatever. Like,
Yeah, no, that's so true. That
you know.
happened for us too. With every kid that we had less and less things, especially for the newborn baby stage.
Hmm.
People will be like, oh my gosh, four kids, where are you storing all that stuff? And I'm like, really? It's not that much. Babies are pretty simple when you look at the just basic needs of a baby. What do we actually need when we have a baby, or what do we have, for sleep or whatever it is? They just don't need that much. And I think that that's something that's super interesting because it makes it less of a what we should do and more of a what do we want to do.
Hmm. I love that. And I know part of when we were talking about recording this episode, part of what you had talked about that really caught my eye is this idea of like defining your values, your family values, or your parenting values, and then kind of how do we translate in that into action. And for a lot of my clients, like they come to me because their sleep values don't line up with mainstream ways of managing sleep, right? And some of people I feel like maybe have thought about their values beyond there, but I think a lot of even my clients who might have really well articulated sleep values, with little kids, you haven't necessarily intentionally thought about that in a broader way. So I would love to hear a little bit from you about where do you start with thinking about your values and family values?
Values are a tricky subject because they can be so broad,
Yeah.
right? Like you talk to somebody and they're going to say, well, yeah, my family values kindness. And I'm like, well, most families value certain things, right? Like you're not going to meet a
Mhm.
family that says, well, no, I don't value kindness. Like who doesn't want to be kind? And so you have to be able to be very specific in your conversations about value identification. And it's more than just the surface level things like, we value being good people or any of those
Mhm.
kinds of things. You need to dig into what is really at the core of the identity of yourself and your family. How do you find those identities? Where do you look for those? And then how do you combine them together for a cohesive family value system? So there are certain things that you can start with. One being just your own personal value system. So you can do a deep dive into yourself as an adult and say, what are things that are really important to me? How do I identify those? Whether it's
Mhm.
through personality tests, spiritual gifting tests, whether you take, any kind of those tests like the Enneagram tests or Myers-Briggs, those are always really, really good ones to explore. But then you can also go a step further and you can do like there's list tests that I have one actually that I use for clients where you just have a whole list of all these different kinds of things that people find important, education or, faith or whatever it is that you do, and you circle them. And then what you can do is you can give one to your partner and they can also take those tests too. They could do Myers-Briggs, they could do that values test, they can identify all of those things and then you can compare them. But what's tricky is that a family isn't just the adults, it's also the
Mhm.
kids. And so this is where I think that it becomes really fun is that in family value identification, not only do you start with yourself and then go to you and the other partner that you have in your relationship, but you also can involve your children, whether it's having your kids take a version of the Myers-Briggs test or whatever testing that you want to do, or I have a test that I do with kids, like if they're really, really little, with pictures where they can circle, like, I like to be kind, or I like, well, now we are talking about being kind, but I like
For
this, or I
kids.
like that. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can have your kids do it. And it's funny because when we
Uh-huh.
did this with our kids originally, we didn't have a test like that. And so I was asking, my 3 and 4 year old little girls, like, what's important to you? And they're like, princesses. Like, all right, we'll write it on the list. And so it's fun because it becomes more fun and adventurous than I think what we look at it as, right? We look at values and it's like, that's a serious subject. But what I want people to know is that there are a lot of different ways that you can do it and they should be fun. It shouldn't be a chore. It should be this really cool discussion that happens around the kitchen table or in the car on the way to a family trip or, while you're throwing the football outside that just makes it fun to be together and to talk about it and to dream and to form these ideas. And so no family is the same and no process for finding your values will be the same. And no family will have the same value system as another family. And so it's really unique, which just makes it also really fun.
And see, I like almost more than whatever you get out of your kiddos, just that process of including them in the exercise of
Mm-hmm.
figuring it out, right? That like I don't know, giving them buy-in, bringing them into a process, I feel like is so great.
Yes, I'm really big on autonomy with kids, whether it's chores or owning their own, laundry process or taking care of their things or having family ownership in the household tasks. I think even something as simple as cooking in the kitchen, that's something that we value in our house is autonomy with our kids, taking ownership. There's a book called Hunt, Gather, Parent, and
Yes.
they talk about giving your kids an ownership card in your family and being able to let them have the ability to also take pride in whatever it is that you're doing in your family. I think that has a huge impact. So especially when it comes to your family values, that's really important to have them involved. And also knowing that as your kids grow and your family evolves, your value system may as well. So you want to be able to come back to it. And then that's fun for the kids because they can be like, remember when we were 4 and we said, princesses were a really important family value for us. Like, how fun is that you let us put that on our mission statement for our family when we were that little. And now we want to change it because now we like turtles instead of princesses or whatever it is. And, being able to let it evolve as your kids grow too.
I love that because I was just thinking about like, okay, parents listening who have babies who obviously can't, contribute, or like 1-year-olds that can't contribute necessarily to that. And maybe it's more like, what do we, imagine for them? But then that idea of revisiting it as they grow and like the preschooler can contribute because you were saying, your daughters were 3 and 4. And then that we can revisit as they become more like school age kids with maybe a little bit more complex
Mm-hmm.
things they want to contribute. And I love that just as they grow.
Yeah. And even when you have a younger child, so newborns, I think, newborn land, you're just trying to figure out how to have a baby in the beginning. And then also as you accumulate more, maybe your values evolve around newborns. But like a 1-year-old has distinct interests. They may not be able to tell you what they are, but like my son was obsessed with trains as a 1-year-old. And so one of the things that we utilized in that was we joined there's a transportation museum not far from us that has trains specifically. And so that was something that we prioritized, was like, let's make a trip and let's go to the transportation museum and let's, have a birthday party there and be able to embrace that interest. So values don't necessarily have to be stagnant. They can surround the interests of the family and hopefully evolve as the family grows and their interests change as well.
I love that because you're prioritizing those interests, right? And that a 1-year-old's interests are valid and worth prioritizing.
Yeah. And it makes it fun to spend time together as a family
Yeah.
too. So it's a
Yeah.
cool way to explore it.
Yeah. I love that. You mentioned a mission statement. I think you said a family mission statement.
I
Tell
did.
me a little bit more about that.
Yes. So I think what is really cool is when you have these lists, when you have this information about you, your partner, and your family, you can compile them into a family mission statement. And that gives you a really clear, concise way to communicate to yourselves what your decision-making process will be for all aspects of your life, including physical items in your home, maybe your calendar, and how you spend your finances. So when you identify, we were talking about princesses, but let's go serious for a second with a value system. For us, reading is a really big priority for our family. My husband and I are avid readers. I wrote a book. So obviously books are important in our house. And one of the ways that we have been able to prioritize reading is we opt for storage space for books over toys, maybe, or we choose a gift that surrounds reading when it comes to birthdays and holidays, or if we can, we're going to opt to read instead of watch TV. So these are all little ways that one value trickles into our family. And what I think is helpful is when you have a mission statement that can give you really solid, singular piece of information that will allow you to filter all of your decisions through. Because if you just say, yes, I like this value, yes, I like this value, yes, I like this value, that's amazing. But when you can take those and consolidate them into something, it makes it a boundary system for you. And that makes things clearer for you when you're trying to decide, well, do we want to go to this birthday party, or do we want to purchase this item that costs X amount of money that's going to take up a lot of space in our house? And so you're able to more clearly make decisions based off of your value system and your mission statement.
I like that. It gives a little structure for you to lean on or guidance.
Yes.
I'm just curious, this is more of a me question, necessarily relevant to anyone else. How do you navigate when, like, reading being a leisure activity, right? Oh, also education. Also, I mean, I don't want you to pigeonhole it, but like reading is important to me, right? I
Right.
wouldn't say it's important that we read with our kids, but like that's not how my husband relaxes, right? It's not with a book. And so just thinking about like, I guess for any families, you'll have some of these values that they're not at odds in like a bad way, but they're not totally in sync either. Do you have any thoughts on navigating that kind of?
Yeah, I think what's really helpful is because remember when we started talking about values, we started with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have that be as part of your mission statement that feeds into your family mission statement and your family values.
Mm-hmm.
And that will help for the uniqueness of your family, but that doesn't necessarily pigeonhole your husband into being in that way either, because he might have something else that he finds really important that can bring into that as well. So, for example, my husband not only has like his own mission statement, but then we also have a family mission statement. So something that he pursues in his own personal life as well as his family life. And I think that that's really helpful for him and gives him direction. I haven't figured mine out yet. Mine's still in progress, but he's much better at that than I am. But yeah, so I think that that's totally fine. That if reading is really important to you, you are somebody that values that, and we're just using that as an example. Maybe it's kumquats or something else that's really important to you, and so that's okay to be able to be unique in your partnership and your family. And how do we bring that to the table? Because we also complement our family members, PLEMENT. So we're always fitting different pieces of the puzzle together. We're not supposed to be exactly the same. Just like my family is different than your family, I'm different from my daughter, who's different than my husband. And so together, combined, it's like, remember, oh gosh, remember that show, Planet Earth? Was that Captain Earth?
Yes, Captain
forever ago?
Yes,
With these
yes.
powers combined. It's
Captain
just like
Planet,
that.
yes.
Yeah, Captain Planet. There we go. So it's that same idea where we combine all of our unique values or all of our unique traits together, and that's what makes us special. And so it's okay that we're different too. What we don't want to do is discourage different interests throughout our family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We want to embrace those and see how we can fold them all together.
That makes sense. I love that, actually. I love that.
Okay.
So thinking about the pressure to be so busy and to do all the things, especially when you have, let's say, baby and toddler, right? So the early years. I would just love to explore a little bit more about how we take some of those values and bring them to the stuff we let into our home, like purchasing wise, but also how we manage our time and create those boundaries and limits that help us as parents to operate in a way that aligns with those values.
Yes. So I think the best way to look at it is, are we going to be proactive or are we going to be reactive when it comes to our family system? And that's where the values come in, because we can be proactive in understanding that there are certain things that are better for our family than others, and being able to discern what those things are and say no. And no is a really hard word for parents in today's generation. I think we're just people pleasers all around, and that's not a bad thing, but it is healthy to say no, whether it's no, I'm so sorry, we've exceeded the amount of commitments that we have currently, we cannot join another soccer team, or thank you so much, we actually don't need any birthday gifts right now, we've run out of closet space, we need to donate gifts before we can have more, or whatever it is. So being able to identify what it is that we want to say yes to, and letting the other things be automatic no's, which is a really challenging topic, especially right now, because we're inundated with what we should do and the pressures that we feel obligated to do, and the hurry, hurry, hurry mentality of just life. And it's a lot. I equated it in my book to the idea of walking up a down escalator, right? And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what we're doing. And it takes active practice to do. Otherwise, we'll just keep getting swept down the escalator. We'll get roped right back into where we were. So being able to take an active stance and knowing what it is that we want to say yes to and where we need to say no, which is immensely difficult. And sometimes the easiest thing you can do is to just start with one small thing. No, honey, we're not going to get another toy at Target today. That's it.
I love that. Just one step at a time, right? If you feel like you are very overcommitted and have all the expectations, like it can be as simple as starting in one place.
Yeah, and asking yourself the essentialism question, right? Like what do I absolutely need to do in this idea? So one of the questions that I'll phrase when I'm talking to parents who are expecting is, what is it that we absolutely need in order to have a baby? Right? What does a baby need? What do we need in our home just to be able to survive and have this small person come into our lives? And when you look at it from that idea, it becomes a lot simpler than, oh, well, we need this bassinet and we need this, and then these sleep sacks and this and that. And this is like, well, you can have those. There are nice things to have, but what is a need to have in this situation? So what I would suggest doing in those moments where we feel like we are overwhelmed or inundated with just busyness and calendar clutter or physical clutter is like, what do we actually need in this situation? What is the essential item that I need to find in here? And what are all the things that need to be moved out of the way to be able to clear the space? And that's a hard thing sometimes because our emotions can get attached to things, or we feel bad if we're saying no to something, or we feel like we're a bad parent because we say no more travel soccer team or whatever it is that's overwhelming us. But we need to go back to the basic question of what is most essential in this moment. And a lot of times, it's kind of surprising. Oh, well, it's a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. It might not be the easy answer, but it's the simpler one.
And I think some families can just innately enjoy more. This is something I've noticed just as a parent. Like my husband and I are kind of homebodies. So we don't like doing a bunch of stuff. So I will sometimes hear some of my more extroverted friends' weekends, and I'm like, one of your days exhausts me. And they're like all jazzed up. They don't actually feel overcommitted. And I'm like, just hearing you makes me tired. And it's not necessarily because they're doing anything wrong or I'm doing anything wrong. It's because just they thrive on more social energy and doing more stuff. And I'm like, I just kind of want to chill on the weekend. Like, I don't necessarily want to go to a million places every weekend. I know maybe that ties back into values as far as like your level of social commitments or interactions, or just knowing yourself as a person. I'm
Yeah. Oh,
totally an
for sure.
introvert, right? Like I don't need to be around people all the time, and huge groups of people are exhausting for me. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
no thanks.
Oh, 100%. I also think it's that is fine if that's the way that the parents thrive, but I also think it's really important to be able to identify how the kids react to that
Yes.
as well. Because for me, I love being around people. I am more of a homebody now than I used to be, but me of 15 years ago, I could totally have rocked one of those Saturdays. But now I'm a little bit more of I'm cool to chill a little bit more, have some social commitments and some home commitments. But I have one particular child that is more of an introvert and does not thrive on those things and can easily socially burn out. And she needs to be able to have more time at home just to kind of chill out and rest. And when I can be aware of how those things affect my kids as well as myself, that makes a big difference too, because it's not just about the grownups, it's about the way that it happens with the kids too.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side of it is that I have another child that could live every day, all day, with people surrounding her all the time, like total chaos, and thrive on it for years, like just that level of energy. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
super interesting how they combine in one household and how we need to be able to find that happy medium for everybody. And so I think that's a really great way to be able to also tie back into your values is your personalities and how does your family become uniquely your family, and embracing the beauty that comes with having multiple people all combined into one household and being able to bring something different and complementary to the table. But yeah, no, the Saturdays are not my jam anymore at all.
It can be hard, right, to navigate all those social expectations because, like, you want to maintain those social ties, and also, ooh, it can be a lot.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. So one thing that you can do is create a formula. I'm all about a system when it comes to things. I do. I know
I love
people.
it. I'm bad at making them. I love it though. I love people
So
making them.
it doesn't have to necessarily be super formal, and it doesn't have to be super structured. It could just be the idea of knowing how your week flows. For us, we have taken Sundays off of the table for social obligations for us. So we now only reserve Sundays for family and for church. If
Hmm.
there's a social obligation that comes through church, that's different. But in general, our family knows that we can count on Sundays, especially Sunday afternoons, is like we are chilling. We are resting, we are home, we are together, we are likely outside and just rejuvenating. And that wasn't always the case. You would be amazed at the number of birthday party invitations that we get for Sundays.
Hmm.
And we decline all of them now. And it's not because we don't want to go. It's because we know that if we don't give ourselves that Sunday rest, we aren't prepared for our week. We
Yeah.
need that as a family. And so that shortens where we are willing to do our social time. It doesn't mean that we don't have social time. It just means, okay, hey, we want to hang out. I want to get dinner with a girlfriend. We could do it on a Friday night. We could do it on a Saturday night. But Sunday, we're going to look at next weekend and being more intentional with how we plan our schedule. And it gives us the ability to build in that rest or that time that we need as a family and knowing that it's coming, which is nice too. It's kind of like when you look forward to spring break or vacation, you're like, oh, I've got this trip coming up. I'm so excited. I'm going to rest. It's going to feel so good. Knowing that you have that time, and by you, I mean our family, when we have that time, that's rejuvenating for us as well to look forward to. So you can create a system for your family where you still build in those windows and those pockets, but it doesn't have to be always just saying yes to everything and knowing that you can decline certain things.
I love that because you're really protecting, right? Like
Yes.
you are creating a protected space, and that takes some boundary setting with yourself, and some self-discipline to make sure. Because if you start saying yes to one birthday party, then it's like there's a crack, right? And then the whole system can kind of unravel. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just much easier to be like, no, we don't accept invitations for this time.
Yeah. And you can
Um,
be really kind about it
yeah.
and you can explain it to people. And when I've explained it to people, a lot of the times their reactions are like, oh, I get that. Okay,
Hmm.
no problem. It's not, they're not taking offense to it because
It's
I'm
nothing
saying,
personal.
yeah, not at all. Thank you so much. We're so honored that you want to hang out or that we want to do this. We would love to spend that time with you. You know what? We leave Sundays for family and for church, and maybe we could plan it for Saturday afternoon, or we've got this date coming up and we'd love to do this with you. And so it sparks an interesting conversation. And I don't find many people take offense to it, but we feel like we're going to be offensive by standing up for ourselves in some of those situations. So sometimes it's a get out of our own heads idea
Hmm.
and not necessarily that other people are actually going to take that much issue with it.
I think that's like a parenting lesson though, right? Like, because
Mm.
I feel like as parents, we do actually have to draw a lot of boundaries that we feel like people are going to get offended by. And I mean, frankly, sometimes for some boundaries, people are, but that's not really our problem as long as we're, drawing a a boundary like kindly and respectfully. Um, because if it is what we need to do for our family and it's a reasonable boundary, then other people can have their feelings about it, and that's not really ours to carry, you know?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that I find my discomfort in communicating boundaries, my the level of discomfort increases with the closer they are in my inner circle. So it's
Mm,
harder for me to draw a boundary and say something to my immediate siblings or to my parents or to immediate relatives versus like a family that's inviting us to go to a park on a certain day that we can't do it. Like the closer that someone is to me, the harder it is to be able to establish some of those boundaries. And I just find that so fascinating in so
hmm.
many ways, right? Like it's harder to tell your mom no in some ways than it is to tell like a random friend no. And that just makes things more complicated at times.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you hear this a lot with very new parents and family help, and why sometimes they want like a postpartum doula to come in and help them, even if they have family available, because
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to have a professional and just say what you want, what you don't want, than
Mm-hmm.
necessarily to be telling your mother or your mother-in-law or your sister, you know, what you want and more importantly, what you don't want as
Yeah,
far as their help is concerned.
oh, for sure. We live nearby a lot of family and for years solely depended on family members for babysitting and then finally hired a babysitter for something. And we were like, whoa, this is such a different experience. And I'm super grateful for all of the help that our family has provided. We have amazing family. My in-laws are incredible. I don't have any complaints whatsoever. But it's different when you feel like someone's
Mhm.
doing you a favor versus when you're hiring someone to do it and you feel less obligation to reciprocate versus like, no, I hired a doula for this help and I'm so glad that they're here and this is why they are here. And so sometimes that's an interesting idea too of being able to have those boundary lines of maybe that makes things easier for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's hard to be an adult sometimes, right? Like
It is,
I
yes.
don't I don't think we're always very well prepared to navigate these, like identify what's important and then putting it into action. Like there's so many steps there that I feel like I don't know, societally, I don't know, maybe if it I don't know if there's a age component, but like I feel like that we miss some of the this should be something that we raise kids to be better at than we are at, I feel like. And including them in the process maybe is laying that foundation for them to have a much easier time as an adult,
Mm, I
you
love
know?
that. Yeah. Yeah. That's really insightful for sure.
Yeah. So as you're kind of thinking about busy parents of littles, and as we're sort of wrapping things up, anything we didn't talk about that you feel like is really important as far as putting those values into actions and simplifying the craziness of parenting?
I think really it we're so good at complicating things. We're
Yes.
so good at getting wrapped up in things. And I would love to be able to just encourage parents to know that it doesn't have to be as complicated as it might be in our brains. So even just a simple no once in a while makes a big difference. Or being able to know, I don't want to have my family prioritize this particular thing. Or I know that this is really, really important to my spouse and I would like to learn more about it. Let's have a meaningful conversation about it. Just something small, a little change can make a big difference. And it doesn't have to be as complicated sometimes as we make it to be in our brains.
I love that. We do tend to overcomplicate things, and I am such an overthinker, so I will totally put myself in that camp. Absolutely. But I love that. I say that with sleep a lot, right? Like these little things can really add up and be very powerful.
Mhm.
And so I love that in terms of this, in terms of what we prioritize, and small shifts in how we bring that into our day-to-day life and where does our energy go? Where does our time
Mhm.
go?
Mhm. I agree. Yeah.
Awesome. I love this. Jenna, where can folks find your work and your book?
Thank you. So my book is for sale anywhere that you can find a book online, Amazon or wherever else you want to look. It's called Let's Choose Less. My name is Jenna Michael. You can also find me on Instagram at purposeful__parenting. And you'll find all kinds of silly reels on there. I'm always doing something crazy. I'm usually sharing just the relatable, real things that happen along with being a parent. I ask some very interesting, well, I think they're interesting questions on there of things. So follow me, you can send me a message. And then my website is yourpurposefulparenting.com if you want to check out more of my work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation, Jenna.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.